I'm Olivia Parker, 31, the only daughter in a family that is measured by cars in the driveway and headlines in the paper. I wore hand-me-downs, rode the bus, while my brother Nathan lived in the spotlight. Every holiday reminded me where I stood invisible. Last Christmas, he raised his glass and sneered, still taking the bus, and the table roared with laughter. Maybe you've sat at a table like that too, where respect feels rationed. Stay with me, and I'll show you how one quiet night turned everything upside down. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where winters dragged on for months and the buses rattled so loud you could barely hear yourself think. Every morning I pressed my face against the cold glass, watching my breath fog up the window, while snow piled on the sidewalks outside. My coat came from Goodwill too big and the sleeves buttons mismatched. Nathan, my older brother, walked into school wearing his shiny varsity jacket, the one with the school logo stitched proudly on the front. Wherever he went, people lit up. Nathan was the golden boy. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of confidence that made entire bleachers cheer. Every wall in our house told his story, trophies stacked in neat rows, medals hanging from nails, newspaper clippings framed with care. His smile stared back from every photo front and center, while I was either tucked into a corner or missing altogether. Ethan, our youngest, was fragile. He caught colds, easily missed classes often, and our parents treated him like glass. Ethan needs his rest, my mother would remind us. That meant chores, laundry, even running errands. Those fell on me. I carried it all quietly. But no one noticed, and no one thanked me. What kept me going was science. While Nathan practiced free throws in the driveway, I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor taking apart an old radio I'd found at a garage sale. I sketched circuits in my notebook, wrapped copper wire around nails, and tested little experiments. I told myself I didn't care if no one noticed, but deep down I longed for recognition. When I was 15, I entered the state science fair. My project was simple: an algorithm that reduced energy waste in lighting systems. It wasn't flashy, but I poured everything into it: late nights, hunched over a desk lamp, weekends buried in code and wiring. And when the judges announced the results, my name echoed across the auditorium. First place, the entire state of Ohio. I can still feel the weight of that trophy in my hands, the lights blinding the applause surrounding me. For once, I believed this was my moment. I carried the trophy home like it was made of glass, careful not to smudge the shine. When I opened the door, I froze. My family was already celebrating. Nathan had just returned from his basketball game, jersey damp, with sweat hair messy from victory. On the table sat a frosted cake. "Congrats, team victory!" My mother beamed, clapping her hands as Nathan retold his game-winning shot. I clutched my trophy tighter, stepped into the living room, and tried to match their energy. "I won first place at the state science fair," I said, voice trembling with excitement. The room went still for half a second. My father finally spoke, not looking at me. "That's nice, sweetheart." But Nathan's three-pointer brought the whole crowd to their feet. "Did you hear, son? The paper's already written about it." My mother's eyes stayed on Nathan, glowing with pride. Ethan clapped, but not for me. He laughed, as Nathan mimicked his final shot, basking in their attention. I shifted the trophy in my hands, the metal cold against my skin. "But this is statewide." I tried again. "All of Ohio." "Olivia." My mother cut me off, her voice sharper now. "Don't overshadow your brother's big night." Her words hit harder than I expected. My throat tightened, but I swallowed it down. I held the trophy so firmly my fingers ached standing there, while their laughter rose again, leaving me invisible in my own living room. Later that night, I placed the trophy on my bedroom shelf. Through the window, the street lamp light glinted off its gold surface. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at it, and whispered to myself, one day they won't be able to ignore me. That trophy should have felt like victory. Instead, it was the first crack. A crack in how I saw my family and how I saw myself. It was the beginning of a silence that would only grow louder. At that moment, I understood the truth. No matter how hard I worked, Nathan's shadow would always stretch across the room. That night planted something in me, a quiet rebellion. And soon I would stop playing the part of the forgotten daughter. By the time I turned 16, the gap between me and my brothers had stretched so wide it felt like we were living in three different worlds. Nathan was cruising around town in the shiny black Jeep our parents had bought him for his birthday, windows down, music blasting, varsity jacket catching the winter sun. Ethan, the youngest, was still driven to school every morning by Mom, cushioned in a world where nothing was expected of him except to scrape by with passing grades. And me, I took the bus straight from school to the town library where I worked part-time shelving books, dusting tables and entering catalog data into the sluggish desktop computers. While classmates lingered at burger joints or lifted weights at the gym, I stacked returns and learned the rhythm of squeaky library carts. I wasn't ashamed of the job, it felt like progress, but I knew my family wouldn't brag about it. To them, it was just another sign that I didn't measure up. I remember that winter clearly. Snow fell so heavy the bus slipped on the icy road as I left the library one evening. In my backpack, tucked inside a worn envelope, was my very first paycheck, $120. I held it in my hands like it was gold heart racing. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I had a goal. I wanted enough money to buy a used laptop off Craigslist. With that, I could finally start working on the ideas that had been filling my notebooks for years. Months passed. Shifts piled up. I skipped outings with friends, stayed late at the library, and pinched every dollar. Then one Saturday afternoon, I handed over cash to a man selling his old Dell laptop. The screen was scratched, the battery barely lasted 2 hours, but when I carried it home, it felt like victory. I wiped the keys clean one by one, treating it like a treasure. In my mind, it wasn't just a machine, it was a ticket out. But whatever joy I had was crushed when Nathan's 18th birthday arrived. Our house transformed into a party hall. Balloons floated against the ceiling, a 3-tiered cake gleamed under string lights, and hip-hop rattled the walls. Nathan's friends filled the living room, varsity jackets everywhere, girls with glossy hair laughing at every joke. My mother served steak dinners, my father poured beers for the guests. All of it revolved around Nathan as though he were a celebrity. I had worked for weeks on my gift. It wasn't expensive, it wasn't flashy, but it was mine. A scrapbook handmade filled with old family photos, picnics at the park, summers by the lake, baby pictures of Nathan riding on Dad's shoulders. I thought maybe it would remind him of who we were before the world started praising him for every basket. Maybe just for a second I'd see recognition in his eyes. When the time came for presents, I handed him the small blue-wrapped package. He tore the paper, opened the cover, and stopped. The room went quiet for a moment, waiting. Then Nathan burst out laughing. "What is this?" He held the scrapbook high, showing the room. "A homemade picture book, Olivia. This is a birthday party, not kindergarten craft hour." Laughter rippled through the crowd. One of his friends slapped his back. "Hey, at least she tried. Not bad for the girl who works at the library." Nathan leaned into it, grinning. "Yeah, how much did you make this week, Olivia? Enough to buy yourself another used laptop? Maybe you'll save enough to get one that actually works someday." The room exploded in laughter again. I froze. My ears burned. My eyes darted toward my parents, silently begging. My father chuckled awkwardly and took another sip of beer. My mother murmured, "Nathan, don't be mean," but her voice was drowned out by the chorus of snickers. I wanted to shout that I bought that laptop with my own sweat, that it was more valuable than his shiny Jeep, because I had earned it myself. The words stuck in my throat. My fists clenched. The scrapbook pages dug into my palms, sharp as glass. In that moment, something hardened inside me. If they wouldn't see me, I would make myself impossible to ignore. I swore I would never ask for their help again. If I had to build a life with nothing but my own 2 hands, I would. And one day Nathan wouldn't be able to laugh at me. Later that night, while the party raged on downstairs, I slipped into my room and set the scrapbook aside. I opened my second-hand laptop, the blue glow of the screen spilling across my desk. On the home page of a free coding website, I placed my fingers on the keyboard. Music and laughter thundered through the floorboards, but I tuned it out. Line by line, I began writing code. That small, battered machine became my weapon, the tool that would take me far beyond the borders of our small Ohio town. From that night on, I stopped waiting for recognition. I stopped waiting for my family to see me. Instead, I started waiting for the moment I could leave. And when the scholarship came, I knew my chance had arrived. What I didn't know was that the laughter would follow me even onto a college campus hundreds of miles away. At 18, I held in my hands a letter that felt like a lifeline. A full scholarship to the University of Michigan computer science major. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the bold letters, heart pounding. All the hours spent shelving books at the library, the nights coding on my second-hand laptop, the sacrifices it had all led here. I finally had a way out of Ohio. I walked into the kitchen letter trembling in my hands, expecting maybe just this once to see my parents' faces light up. My mother glanced at the page, set it down beside a pile of junk mail, and said flatly, "Michigan is fine. But Nathan just got a partial scholarship from the state's law school. That's a real path to becoming somebody." My father didn't even look at me. He turned to Nathan, clapping him on the back. "Son, you're on your way to a bright future. Someday you'll have a law office downtown. Just imagine." The words stuck in my throat. A full scholarship. To a program exploding with opportunity. And yet in this house, it was as if I'd achieved nothing at all. I wanted to scream that computers were the future, that what I had was bigger than a partial scholarship. Instead, I pressed my lips together and folded the letter back into its envelope. I'd learned by then Nathan's light swallowed everything. That fall, I left Ohio behind. Ann Arbor greeted me with brick buildings, sprawling quads, and maple trees painting the campus gold. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. No one here knew me as Nathan's sister. I was just Olivia, the girl who sat in the front row, typed code until midnight, and joined the robotics club with fire in her eyes. I threw myself into work. With my scholarship covering tuition, I picked up a side research project, an AI program that optimized student schedules. It wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. Professors noticed. One even offered to add me to a larger research team. For the first time, I felt my efforts were more than invisible. But Thanksgiving dragged me back into old shadows. We gathered at my grandmother's house, the long table crowded with turkey mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce. Nathan sat at the head crisp suit jacket on spinning stories about law school. He boasted about the professor who praised his essay about classmates who saw him as a leader. The family leaned in, hanging on his every word. Ethan nodded like Nathan was speaking gospel. When there was a pause, I cleared my throat. Our team's working on an AI scheduling tool. It could save students hours every semester. My advisor thinks it could be adopted by multiple schools. Nathan smirked before I could finish. AI for class schedules. Sounds like one of those free apps people delete after a week. My father chuckled. "Olivia, maybe you should study something more practical. Tech changes too fast. Law that's solid. That lasts." My mother joined in, her tone soft but cutting. "Sweetheart, don't stretch yourself too thin. Remember, someday you'll need to think about family, being a wife, a mother. You can't spend forever chasing projects." The fork nearly slipped from my hand. I forced my voice steady. "This isn't just a project. If it works, it could change how universities manage classes." Then Ethan, the quiet one, chimed in, his words sharper than he probably knew. "Who needs an app to pick classes? Only nerds would care about that." Laughter rippled around the table. It was the scrapbook all over again. Except this time, it wasn't just Nathan and his friends. It was my entire family laughing at the thing I'd worked hardest on. I swallowed hard, but something inside me cracked. They would never see me. Not here. Not in Ohio. Not even with a full scholarship and research professors backing me. Nathan was the pride. I was the afterthought. After dinner, while the others lingered over the pie, I slipped out onto the porch. Snow drifted silently under the porch light. In my coat pocket, I clutched my student ID and robotics lab pass. Small rectangles of plastic, but to me they were proof that I belonged somewhere. I whispered to myself, almost like a vow. If they won't recognize me, I'll build something so undeniable that the world will, and I won't need their applause. Mini climax. At that moment, I knew. My family's approval wasn't my finish line anymore. It was my fuel. That night, as the snow kept falling, I felt a strange calm. I had chosen my path, and nothing, not Nathan's shadow, not my parents' indifference, would push me off it. Hook to Chapter 4. I couldn't have known how quickly that vow would be tested. Years later, when I graduated at the top of my class, my family chose to gather around Nathan for photos, leaving me standing alone, diploma in hand. May in Ohio carried a kind of sharp brightness, the kind that made the banners strung across campus almost glow. Red flags fluttered against the sky, students in caps and gowns poured onto the lawns. Families shouted, laughed, cried, snapped endless photos. It should have been the happiest day of my life. I wore my red gown, the tassel swaying against my dark hair. In my hands was the diploma I'd worked for through 4 years of scraping by library shifts, ramen dinners, coding, until my eyes blurred. I thought maybe, just maybe today I'd hear the words I'd been chasing since I was a child, "We're proud of you." But as soon as I walked out of the stadium, the sight waiting for me stopped me cold. My parents, Nathan and Ethan, were already gathered around Nathan. Not me. Nathan had just been accepted for a summer associate role at one of Chicago's top law firms. The family swarmed him, slapping his back, tugging his sleeves, celebrating as if he were the one who had just walked the stage. I froze a few steps away. My red gown caught the sunlight, but no one turned. My mother glanced at me briefly, then waved me off. "Olivia, wait a moment. We need to get Nathan's photos first." The words sliced deeper than she realized. This wasn't Nathan's event. This was my graduation. I tried to step closer as my father raised the camera. I leaned in, hoping to wedge myself into the frame. His hand shot out, blocking me gently but firmly. "Hold on. Let Nathan stand in the middle. This is his moment. His moment." The words echoed in my head louder than the cheer of the crowd around us. Ethan, standing a little off to the side, smirked. "What's she going to show off anyway? A coding diploma? You don't see those hanging in a law office." The group chuckled and my chest tightened. My throat felt raw, like I couldn't force a single word out. I wanted to scream that my work mattered, that tech was building the future while they clung to the past. But their laughter smothered every thought. I backed away, each step heavier than the last. I found a bench under a tree away from the clusters of families taking proud photos. Around me, friends held diplomas high, while their parents wrapped them in hugs. Siblings cheered, grandparents dabbed at their eyes. I gripped my diploma so hard it bent at the edges, my hands trembling. Then a voice over the loudspeakers cut through the air. "Award for statewide research excellence goes to Olivia Parker." The crowd clapped as I stood again, legs unsteady. I walked across the stage a second time, accepted a certificate from the dean, flashes of cameras popping from all sides. For a heartbeat, I felt seen. I scanned the crowd for my family. They weren't even looking. They were still huddled around Nathan, my mother straightening his tie. My father laughing at something he'd said. Not one camera pointed at me. Mini climax. In that instant, the truth hardened inside me. I could climb as high as I wanted, collect as many honors as the world could hand me, and still they would only ever see Nathan. I lingered long after the crowds thinned. The heat of the day rose off the pavement, cicadas buzzed in the trees. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw an email from a professor at MIT. "Congratulations on your graduation," he wrote, and an invitation to join a graduate research program. A chance to step into something bigger. I should have felt joy. Instead, I felt steel. If my family couldn't acknowledge me, then I'd build a life so undeniable, so vast, that they wouldn't be able to look away. On the drive home, fate threw me a strange gift. I ran into my old mentor, Professor Adler. He clasped my shoulder, eyes kind. "Sometimes, Olivia," he said, "family isn't where we find recognition. It's where we learn to rise above it." Those words stayed with me. More than the diploma, more than the certificate, they became the fuel that pushed me forward. Because from that day on, I wasn't just running from Nathan's shadow. I was building something entirely outside of it. And soon, I would leave Ohio behind to write my own story. Boston. The name alone made my chest tighten as the Greyhound bus hissed to a stop that crisp autumn morning. Glass towers rose like blades sunlight bouncing off steel. I stepped down with one hand gripping my second-hand suitcase, the other clutching the battered laptop I'd bought after months of shelving books in Ohio. That was all I carried. At MIT, I walked past families hugging their kids, snapping photos, tears and laughter spilling over. I had no one. No send-off, no cheering. For the first time, though, that emptiness felt freeing. I had left the cage behind. In the lab, I set down my laptop. Its fan-wind screen flickered. Professor Larson paused, looked at the machine, then at me. It might be old Olivia, but if it runs, it's a weapon. I see fire in you. That's what matters. His words lit something in me. The struggle came fast. My classmates compared internships at Google and Microsoft, talked about family businesses and summer trips abroad. I brewed coffee at a corner cafe just to buy books, often stumbling into the lab with exhaustion clinging to me. At times I wondered if I was foolish to come here with so little. Then fate twisted. At a workshop, I met Maya, a business student with sharp eyes and an easy laugh. She pointed at my worn laptop and said, "That thing looks like it could tell stories." Unlike others, she didn't care about brands or status. She asked about my projects and she listened. With Maya, I dared to speak about the idea that had been tugging at me for years, a platform to teach coding to high schoolers with few resources. I thought of the kids at the Ohio library, their faces lit up when they cracked a problem. I wanted to build something for them, something that could lift them. When my family heard the old pattern repeated, my mother sighed. "Olivia, focus on your degree. Don't waste energy on childish ideas." Nathan's voice cut in smooth and sharp. "Boston's too much for you. Come back home. Take a stable job." The ache rose again, but this time it was met with steel. I let silence answer their voices, fading into static. They were no longer steering my life. One freezing night, Maya and I huddled in the lab coats, pulled tight, fingers numb as we typed. The laptop wheezed, but then our demo loaded. A working interface. Simple but alive. I covered my mouth, eyes burning. Relief, not fear. For the first time, the dream had shape. Maya nudged me, grinning. "This is only the beginning. I know someone you should meet, an angel investor. If he likes it, things could change fast." Her words hit me like a bell ringing. The code was barely out of testing, but already a door was opening. A fork in the road. One that could either propel me forward or crush me completely. And I knew I wasn't going to let it slip. Boston in February was a beast. The wind cut straight through my coat, needling at my face until it burned. Maya and I hurried into a brick building that had been converted into a co-working hub. Inside, the air shifted entirely. Long wooden tables gleamed under golden lights. Laptops' word screens flashed with polished slides, and young founders in hoodies bearing bold company logos stood like warriors ready for battle. I clutched my old laptop, its corner patched with tape. It felt like a relic in a room full of sleek machines. My heart thumped hard in my chest. "Don't worry," Maya whispered, brushing snow off her coat sleeve before laying a hand on my shoulder. "They care about the idea, not the packaging." Her tone was steady, but the crease in her forehead told me she wasn't as calm as she wanted me to believe. The pitches began. One team pitched AI for healthcare, complete with glossy graphs and a demo video. Applause echoed across the room. Another presented a luxury ride-hailing app for executives, the audience nodding as though the idea was a goldmine. The rhythm was clear, confidence sold. Then our turn came. I stepped forward with Maya, opened my laptop, and the fan whined loud enough to echo in the hushed hall. A couple of people chuckled. My hands trembled as I held the mic, but I steadied my breath. "We've built a platform," I began, "to make technology education accessible for high school students who lack resources." I barely got 2 sentences out before a man in the front row, blazer sharp and smile sharper, cut in. "You built this with that." He pointed to my laptop, his tone half amusement, half dismissal. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Heat flooded my cheeks. I gripped the mic tighter. "Yes, with this. Because I want to prove that you don't need expensive tech to create opportunity." A younger investor leaned forward, eyebrows raised. EdTech is dominated by billion-dollar corporations. You're one student, no capital, no experience. How do you plan to compete? The words landed like blows. I saw heads nodding, some already tuning out. Maya's hand slipped into mine under the table, squeezing. "Keep going," she whispered. I clicked on the demo. The projector flickered to life, showing our interface. A simple login screen. A library of lessons. The system adjusted difficulty based on performance. I navigated to the coding tutorial. A window popped up with lines of text and feedback prompts. Murmurs spread through the room, not mocking this time, but curious. A professor in the front leaned forward, eyes narrowing in interest. And then it happened. One man, older, hair silver, quietly stood and walked down the aisle. He didn't say a word as he approached us. He simply asked, "May I?" I nodded, stepping aside. His fingers moved across the worn keyboard, typing a string of code. The system responded instantly, adapting guiding. He leaned back, nodded once, and set the laptop down. The silence that followed was thick. But the moment cracked when someone in the back laughed loudly. A young man's voice, dripping with disdain, called out, "Cute idea. But who's going to fund a charity app for poor kids? You'll burn cash for a year and disappear." The laughter returned sharper this time, stinging like cold air against raw skin. I lifted my chin, looked straight at him. "Maybe you're right if all you care about is short-term profit. But if you think about the next generation kids who'll become engineers, doctors, leaders, this isn't charity. It's a long-term investment in America's future." The room went still. The arrogance in the young man's smirk faltered. A few faces shifted, no longer smirking but thoughtful. The pitch ended without thunderous applause, but the silence carried weight. Maya and I stepped into the hallway, both of us shaking our breaths, fogging in the cold air. We survived. Maya said, her laugh shaky but real. My heart was still pounding, but deep down I knew something had shifted. And then, as if to confirm it, a hand landed on my shoulder. I turned. It was the silver-haired man. His grip was firm, steady. He handed me a card. "Olivia, isn't it? I'd like to hear more. Not everyone will see it yet, but I see potential in others." I stared at the simple black and white print, Michael Turner, angel investor. Maya grinned so wide I thought her face might split. On the walk home, she couldn't stop laughing. "Do you realize what just happened? We found our first ally." I looked at the card under the glow of Boston streetlights. For the first time in my life, the weight of dismissal didn't crush me. Instead, I felt something else rising. Not just hope, power. When I stepped back into the old house in Ohio that summer, the air inside felt charged, buzzing with preparations. The kitchen counters were stacked with trays of hors d'oeuvres, the scent of roasted meat filling the rooms. My suitcase was still by the door when my mother apron, tied neatly, gave me a quick glance and tilted her chin toward the dining room. "Can you help set the table? Olivia Nathan's invited important guests tonight. No welcome hug. No how was your trip. Just directions, as if I had slipped back into the role of the extra hand in the house." I nodded, dropping my bag onto the wooden floor with a soft thud, and rolled up my sleeves. From the kitchen, I heard Nathan's voice, booming, practiced and confident. He was in a tailored navy suit, pacing the living room with his phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, it's a big case," he said, laughing easily. "The settlement alone could bring in 6 figures. Tonight we're hosting some top attorneys. We'll talk strategy, maybe even explore a property deal." His tone dropped, but it was just loud enough for me to catch. "This is what matters. Not those little side projects." A pause, then a smirk as he turned his head toward me. I sliced bread at the counter, my hands steady, but inside I burned. By the time the guests arrived, the house was glowing. The dining room sparkled with polished silverware and glasses of red wine. Nathan stood at the center, shaking hands, his voice carrying above the hum of conversation. The room swelled with the sound of laughter and stories about trips to New York. Deals closed, luxury cars purchased. I sat at the edge of the table, quiet, the hum of their voices swirling around me like static. Then one of Nathan's colleagues glanced my way. Olivia, right? I heard you're doing something tech-related. I straightened, ready to explain. But Nathan cut in before I could speak. Oh, yes, he said with a laugh. She's our family CEO. He dragged out the title, turning it into a punchline. The table roared with laughter. CEO of a little eddy tech startup. But really, it's just her and an old laptop. Isn't that right, Liv? My grip tightened around my glass of water. The laughter washed over me, sharp and heavy. I forced my voice steady. We're building a platform for high school students. The demo works. Some investors are interested. A man in his 50s leaned back, chuckling. Investors. For teaching poor kids, that sounds more like charity than business. You won't see profit. Without profit, a company won't last. The words sliced clean, leaving a hollow ache. My mother tried to smooth things over with a polite smile, changing the subject, but Nathan wasn't finished. Liv's always dreaming big, he said, swirling his wine. Meanwhile, I'm closing deals worth hundreds of thousands. She thinks she's changing the world, but she's just typing away at that old laptop. He raised his glass, and the others followed, their laughter rising again, bouncing against the walls. Something inside me clenched. My first instinct was to leave. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the floor. My pulse thundered in my ears. Then a voice broke through the noise. Ethan, my youngest brother, who usually stayed silent in these gatherings, looked straight at Nathan. His voice was louder than I'd ever heard. At least Olivia won her scholarship to MIT. She's smarter than all of us sitting here. The room froze. The laughter died, replaced by an awkward hush. Nathan's smile faltered, his brow tightening. His guests glanced at one another, unsure whether to laugh again or stay silent. For a brief moment, I saw something shift in Ethan's eyes. Defiance. Loyalty. I wanted to thank him, but I couldn't trust my voice not to crack. Instead, I slowly sat back down, fingers brushing against my phone in my lap. It vibrated. I looked down. An email. Michael Turner. Olivia. I'd like to meet next week in Boston. Let's discuss a seed round. I believe your idea has potential to scale. The words glowed against the screen, steady and clear, while laughter in the room stumbled back into awkward chatter. I closed my fist around the phone, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I wasn't just holding a message. I was holding proof. Proof that someone finally saw me. That night, while glasses clinked and Nathan soaked up the attention, I sat quietly, my phone hidden under the table. The weight of it steadied me. I didn't argue with Nathan. I didn't defend myself. I didn't need to, because I knew. A door had opened, and while they were busy mocking me, I was already stepping through it. The next morning, I boarded the bus back to Boston. As the Ohio countryside blurred past the window, my thoughts spun. Michael Turner's faith in me was real, but it also came with a weight I'd never carried before. For the first time in my life, someone was betting on me. And if I failed, I wouldn't just face my family's ridicule, I'd betray the first person who had truly believed in my vision. Boston greeted me that morning with the bitter bite of February wind and the smell of roasted coffee drifting from Tremont Street. My boots clicked against the uneven brick sidewalks as I hurried, clutching a folder of documents and the same old laptop that had followed me from Ohio. Michael Turner's office was nothing like the world I had grown up in. The building towered with glass walls that reflected the sky clean and sharp. Inside, everything was polished wood, muted lighting, and quiet authority. I felt like I had walked into another life. The elevator opened, and there he was, Michael Turner. He wasn't dressed in an expensive suit like I expected. Just a pale blue shirt, a simple tie. His handshake was steady, warm, and firm. "Welcome, Olivia," he said. "I've been looking forward to this meeting." But we weren't alone. Around the table sat 3 others. Maya took the seat next to me, squeezing my arm gently. Across from us were Richard, his hair silver, posture sharp, and Elaine, a woman with keen eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Turner introduced them as his longtime advisors. The meeting began. I stood, my palms slightly damp, and began to present. I laid out the vision and education platform to bring coding to rural high school students, a system adaptive enough to meet each student where they were. I pulled up the demo. The familiar interface is lit up stable responsive. For a brief second I felt proud. But silence followed. Then Richard cleared his throat. "Olivia," he said, voice clipped. "Passion is fine. But a company isn't built on passion alone. How many years of business management do you have?" I steadied my breath. "This is my first company. But I've studied the models for 2 years and I've mapped out a plan for growth." He cut in. 2 years of theory isn't equal to 2 months of running a business. You don't have a finance background, you don't have a team, and frankly, you don't have anything but an idea. Turner. I'd call this a waste. His words landed like stone in my chest. My eyes flicked toward Turner, but his face remained unreadable. Then Elaine leaned forward. Her voice was calm, precise. "Let's be honest, Olivia. You're young. You've never faced failure. Investors aren't just risking money here, they're risking reputation. A young woman without experience can be swept by emotions or worse, manipulated. Millions of dollars can't be bet on enthusiasm alone." The sting of her words was sharp. Unlike the mocking laughter I had endured at home, this wasn't ridicule, it was doubt in my very ability to control my own future. I opened my mouth to respond, but Turner spoke first. His voice was slow, grounded, carrying weight. "Richard, Elaine, I've backed dozens of companies, and the first thing I look for isn't experience. It isn't even capital. It's the ability to stand steady when you're questioned, doubted, even knocked down." Olivia just proved that by continuing her presentation despite constant interruptions. He turned toward me. His eyes were direct, unwavering. "I don't see fragility. I see resolve. And that's what builds empires." The words rolled through me like heat. My pulse raced as he spoke the next sentence clearly for everyone to hear. "I'm in. I'll fund the seed round. Details can be worked out later, but I want to be the lead investor. Olivia, you have my support." I almost couldn't breathe. Relief, disbelief, and hope collided at once. Maya's eyes widened, her hand gripping mine under the table. Across from us, Richard leaned back, lips pressed tight in disapproval. Elaine's gaze narrowed, cold and assessing. But for me, everything shifted. The future cracked open just a little. I thanked Turner, my voice shaking, but my hands trembling with something new possibility. Then in that fragile moment, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out quickly, the glow of the screen catching my eye. A new email. Subject line: "Warning, your idea may be stolen. Check your advisory circle." The breath caught in my throat. My fingers froze around the phone. I lifted my gaze from the screen. Richard was flipping through his notes, his expression unreadable. Elaine was staring directly at me, cool and sharp, as if daring me to react. And beside them, Turner, my new ally, watched me with calm certainty, completely unaware of the storm that had just landed in my inbox. In that moment, victory and suspicion tangled together, impossible to separate. I forced a smile, slipping the phone back into my lap. But inside me, one question began to echo louder than the hum of Boston traffic outside those glass walls. Had I just stepped into my biggest opportunity, or walked straight into a trap set by the very people who claimed to guide me? Chapter 9. Cracks in the Foundation. The sky over Boston hung low and gray that morning, sidewalks brushed with snow that melted into slush under hurried feet. I pulled my scarf tighter, trying to quiet the storm in my head. After Turner's meeting, I thought maybe things were shifting. Maybe I'd finally stepped out of the shadow I'd been trapped in for years. But peace never lasted long in my life. Maya was already waiting at our coffee shop near Kendall Square. It was the kind of place where everyone looked like they were building the next big thing, laptops, open screens, full of code conversations half-whispered about investors and pitch decks. It should have felt inspiring, but that morning the buzz around me only made the knot in my stomach tighter. I wanted a calm start, just 1 hour to plan next steps. I didn't get it. Maya's phone lit up first. She stared, and the color drained from her face. Liv, you need to see this. I leaned across the table as she pushed the screen toward me. The headline on a well-known tech blog blared in bold letters, "Boston's poorest CEO, MIT Dreamers startup, is doomed to fail." My breath caught. I tapped the article open. The words sliced deep: an idealistic charity girl. Fantasies of saving the world. Living proof that buses and hand-me-down laptops don't belong in boardrooms. They even mentioned my tiny Somerville apartment as if my rent check was proof I had no right to lead a company. I could have swallowed that. I had survived worse with my family. But halfway down the page came a line that turned my blood cold. In a closed investor presentation last week, Olivia Parker projected Q2 revenue of $420,000, a figure laughably detached from reality. I froze. That number wasn't public. Only 2 people had seen it, Richard and Elaine. Maya leaned close, her voice sharp. "This isn't random, Liv. Someone leaked it. Someone inside." The coffee cup burned in my hand as I gripped it tighter. "Then we have a traitor." I felt eyes on me. A group of young men at the next table glanced over, smirking. One of them muttered just loud enough, "She should stick to tutoring kids." CEO. That's a joke. Heat rushed up my neck, but before I could react, Maya pressed her hand gently over mine. "Don't give them the satisfaction. Turn it into fuel." The rest of the day unraveled fast. My inbox flooded. 2 investors canceled calls. Another who had promised to circle back soon went silent. Even Turner didn't check in. With each ping of my phone, I felt the ground shift under me, thin ice cracking with every step. But through the chaos, one thought returned: the anonymous email. "They will strike from within. Don't trust everyone. They." The word echoed like a drumbeat. Richard, always dismissive when I talked about mission before profit. Elaine with her cold, cutting stare. Had they already decided I was unfit? Or worse, were they setting me up to fail? That night, Maya and I locked ourselves in our tiny office, the radiator clanging as we pulled laptops onto the desk. Coffee cups stacked around us, whiteboards filled with scribbles. Maya worked the digital trail, chasing IP addresses and timestamps. I dug into file history, searching for anything that could explain how the slide leaked. Hours passed. My eyes blurred. Then Maya froze her breath, catching. "Liv, look." On her screen was a screenshot from the blog article. She zoomed in until the pixels blurred. There, in the corner of one slide, faint but unmistakable, was a warped watermark. I knew it instantly. I'd seen it on Elaine's screen during a Zoom call. The faint mark left by her conferencing software. Maya pointed, her voice low but firm. "It's her. Elaine leaked it." The room went silent except for the hum of our laptops. My stomach twisted. For weeks I had fought to trust, to believe in the advisors Turner had placed beside me, and now one of them had stabbed me in the back. I leaned against the chair, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding so loud it drowned out every other sound. The betrayal stung sharper than any insult my family had ever thrown. At least Nathan's mockery had been open, loud, impossible to miss. Elaine's was quiet, calculated, designed to kill me without leaving fingerprints. Maya's voice broke through. "Liv, listen. This isn't just about you. If we don't hit back, they'll kill the company before it breathes. You've worked too hard to let them write your ending." Her words sank deep. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand answers from Elaine. Instead, I closed my eyes and let the fury settle into something colder. A plan. We worked past midnight. Every line of code, every slide, every connection on our whiteboard became a piece of armor. By the time exhaustion hit, my body was shaking, but underneath it burned a new kind of determination. For the first time since Ohio, I didn't feel like the girl begging to be noticed. I felt like someone who had been underestimated for the last time. Maya rubbed her eyes, yawning. "We'll figure out how to counter this. Maybe a new pitch. Maybe a stronger demo." Her words cut off when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. The kind of call you hesitate on, knowing it might tilt your world in a direction you can't undo. I hesitated, then answered. "This is Olivia." A deep, calm voice came through the line. Olivia Carter. This is Harvard. We need to talk about your platform. The room fell still. My pulse pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. Harvard. They had seen me. They wanted to talk. For a moment, the betrayal that had nearly broken me no longer mattered. Because sometimes when one door slams in your face, another opens in a place you never imagined. I remember that afternoon like it was carved in glass. Boston was gray, the sky heavy, the glass towers reflecting every ounce of gloom. I had just stepped out of a coffee shop with Maya still shaking from anger over that brutal article when my phone lit up. Harvard. Office of Digital Innovation. I froze on the sidewalk, snow crunching under my boots, my pulse racing. Harvard, I had dreamed about walking through their halls, sitting in their lecture rooms. But now, after being mocked publicly as the poorest CEO in Boston, I swiped to answer, forcing my voice steady. Miss Parker, this is Dr. Sarah Klein from Harvard. Came a calm, steady female voice. We've reviewed your education platform. We'd like to meet. I almost lost my words. Across from me, Maya's eyes widened. Harvard wasn't just aware of me, they had reached out. We set the meeting for Monday morning in Cambridge, right in Harvard Yard. When the call ended, my feet felt like they weren't even touching the ground. But the rush of hope didn't last long. The very next day, my phone rang again. Richard. His voice was dripping with false warmth. Olivia. I heard Harvard is looking at your project. Wonderful news. But listen to me. Don't make a fool of yourself. Harvard expects polish. If you walk in there as a rookie CEO, it'll reflect badly. Not just on you, but on all of us. I clenched the phone tighter. How do you even know about this? There was a pause. Then a short, sharp laugh. Harvard doesn't keep these things quiet. News travels fast. And Olivia, you wouldn't want another article like yesterday's to surface, would you? His words left me cold. It wasn't a warning. It was a threat. Someone in my so-called circle of advisors was feeding information to the press, cutting me down before I could even stand tall. By Monday, the weight of it all sat heavy on me. Still, I dressed in my best, nothing flashy, just a gray suit, clean lines sharp enough to say I belonged. I carried my old laptop under my arm, the same one that had survived library shifts and Boston winters. Walking through the gates of Harvard Yard felt like stepping into a storybook. Old brick, ancient trees, students hurrying with books under their arms. My chest tightened. This was everything I had once dreamed of, and now it might turn into another battlefield. The meeting room was sleek, and modern sunlight pouring in through tall windows. Dr. Klein sat at the table, flanked by 2 assistants. She greeted me politely, but my eyes landed on the folder in front of her. Inside printed slides, my slides. Except not the ones I had sent. At the bottom corner, faint but visible, was that watermark. The same one from the leak. I felt heat rise in my chest. Dr. Klein, I said carefully, my voice firmer than I felt. May I ask, who provided you with those slides? Her brows lifted slightly. One of your advisors, Elaine. She said she was representing your team. Beside me, Maya stiffened. Her hand brushed mine under the table, a silent confirmation of what we had already suspected. Elaine. I inhaled deeply. This was the moment. I either folded or I fought. Those slides are not accurate, I said. They were altered to make my company look smaller than it is. I don't know what Elaine told you, but this, I opened my laptop. Hands steady now. This is the real data. On the screen, I showed live dashboards. Numbers of active students. Schools and pilot programs. Preliminary talks with districts. The graphs moved in real time, undeniable proof of growth. I could feel the eyes in the room shift. At first skeptical, then curious, then leaning in. My voice grew steadier with every word. By the time I finished, Dr. Klein closed the folder of altered slides. Her face softened, a small knowing smile flickering across her lips. Very well, Miss Parker, she said. We appreciate your transparency. Harvard will seriously consider a pilot program. Relief flooded me so fast, I nearly forgot how to breathe. It wasn't a contract yet, but it was validation. I had faced the sabotage head-on and refused to let it define me. When the meeting ended, I walked out of Harvard Yard with Maya at my side. The winter air bit at my cheeks, but I felt taller somehow, steadier. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, Olivia. Harvard won't save you." I froze on the stone path, staring at the message. Around me, students laughed and hurried to class life, moving as if nothing had happened. But for me, everything had shifted. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was war. The night Boston froze over, I came home to my apartment with my head still buzzing from Harvard. My laptop bag slipped off my shoulder onto the chair, and I barely had time to sit before my phone started vibrating across the desk. 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 messages from Ethan, and 1 long text from Nathan. It had been years since the family reached out this insistently, and never all at once. For a second, I thought maybe something terrible had happened. But then I opened Nathan's message. "Don't think you can outsmart the family. You're still the girl who takes the bus. Nothing you brag about changes that. This Christmas you'll see." The words burned on the screen. Not a greeting, not even disguised concern. A warning. Ethan's message was shorter. "Liv Nathan wants to meet. Just come home for Christmas dinner. And Mom?" She had left a voicemail, her voice trembling as if she were reading lines off a script. "Olivia. Don't be stubborn. Family is still family. Nathan only wants what's best for you. Please come home." I sat frozen at my desk, snow tapping against the window pane. For years I had fought to carve a life out of nothing, and just as Harvard finally cracked the door open, they pulled me back into the same old game. Maya noticed the tension in my shoulders as I replayed the voicemail. She leaned against the counter, arms folded. "You don't owe them anything, Liv. But maybe it's time to let them see who you've become. Not the girl they left behind, the woman who stood in Harvard's boardroom and didn't flinch." Her words stung because they were true. But I also knew what going back meant. Christmas in Ohio was never about peace or joy. It was a stage Nathan used to perform his little shows, me as the punchline, everyone else as his audience. I spent hours staring at the text, at the blinking cursor in the reply box. My mind replayed every scene, Nathan lifting my scrapbook high and mocking me in front of his friends. Nathan raised a glass at a dinner table, dismissing my startup while guests laughed. Every holiday had been his arena. But something in me had shifted. Harvard hadn't just given me a chance. It reminded me I had built something real. Finally, I dialed Ethan. Maybe he would speak plainly, cut through the fog. Nathan spun around everyone. The line clicked, and his familiar, hesitant voice came through. "Liv, Ethan. Tell me the truth. Why now? Why is Nathan pulling me back for Christmas?" There was silence. I could hear him breathing and could almost picture him pinching the bridge of his nose like he did when he was nervous. Then carefully, "Just come, Liv. Don't make it bigger than it has to be. Nathan said he'll handle things. Don't fight him." The words sliced deeper than Nathan's text. Ethan, the one who used to hide behind me as a boy, the one I thought might still see me, was repeating Nathan's lines. Whether out of fear or loyalty, I couldn't tell. I sat there long after the call ended, phone still pressed to my ear, though the line was dead. The snow outside thickened, blurring the city lights. Then my inbox pinged. A new email. Subject: Harvard. Follow-up meeting confirmed. January. A second chance. A real seat at the table. I stared at the words, feeling 2 worlds collide, the future waiting for me in Cambridge and the past clawing me back to Ohio. I shut my laptop slowly. For years I had dreamed of a moment when they would finally see me, acknowledge me. And now Nathan promised something different, another public scene, another humiliation wrapped in tinsel and turkey. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass of the window. Snowflakes drifted under the glow of the street lamps, silent and relentless. And then it came to me, sharp and steady. If they wanted a Christmas dinner to laugh at me, then this time they wouldn't walk away smiling. Christmas Eve in Ohio came with streets buried in snow, the kind that muffles sound and makes the world feel smaller. I drove a beat-up Honda from the airport, the heater barely keeping up. The house I grew up in glowed at the end of the block, Christmas lights blinking in practiced rhythm. Through the frosted windows, I could hear laughter spilling out, muffled by the cold. I straightened my plain coat, adjusted my scuffed boots, and walked up the steps. For a moment, I felt like the teenage Olivia again, the girl who came home from the library smelling of dust and paper, always overshadowed by Nathan's spotlight. Inside the dining room was warm and golden. A towering Christmas tree sparkled in the corner, ornaments hung just right. The table stretched long plates stacked with turkey and mashed potatoes. And at the head of the table sat Nathan in a deep red suit, glass of wine in hand, grinning as though the whole house was his stage. When I walked in, the air shifted. Conversation slowed, forks paused mid-air. Nathan rose, smirk widening. He lifted his glass high. Well, well. Olivia made it. Still riding the bus, huh? No surprise she doesn't know how to drive up in style. The table broke into laughter. I kept walking, smiling steadily as if I hadn't heard a word. I took the empty seat, folded my napkin calmly, and let the performance continue. Dinner went the way it always had. Nathan boasting about cases at his firm, sprinkling in backhanded comments about how some people chase childish dreams. His friends chuckled, his voice growing louder with each glass of wine. Mom barely looked at me, keeping her eyes on the plates. Dad nodded along with Nathan like an audience clapping on cue. The final strike came when Nathan slammed his palm on the table. Olivia, you embarrass this family. People see me driving luxury cars, closing big deals, living real success. And then they see you 31 still on buses, clinging to pipe dreams. It's pathetic. I set my fork down gently. For years I had stayed silent, swallowing the humiliation. But not tonight. I lifted my chin and locked eyes with him. If you really want to know what I drive, Nathan, why don't you follow me home after dinner? The room froze. Chairs creaked, wine glasses stilled. Nathan blinked, then barked out a laugh. Sure. Let's all go see Olivia's grand bus stop. The table laughed again, but less certain this time. Snow crunched under tires as Nathan's shiny SUV followed my Honda through the quiet streets. Ethan tagged along in his own car, curiosity plain on his face. I pulled into my driveway, the modest 2-story house I'd bought just outside town. The porch light glowed warmly against the dark sky. Nathan parked behind me, rolled down his window, and sneered. Is this it? A shoebox with a garage for one. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked to the side door, remote in hand. The garage door whirred to life. Metal rattled as it rolled upward, and bright lights spilled out onto the snow. Nathan's laughter died instantly. Inside, 3 cars gleamed like jewels under the ceiling lights, a midnight blue Lamborghini Huracan, a sleek black Ferrari 488, and a silver Aston Martin DB11. Their polished curves threw back his reflection a dozen times over. Nathan stepped out of his SUV, jaw slack, the glass he'd carried from dinner slipping from his hand and shattering on the driveway. Ethan's eyes went wide, his breath fogging the air in stunned silence. I stepped past them, walked into the garage, and brushed an invisible speck of dust off the Lamborghini's hood. You're right, Nathan, I said evenly. I don't take the bus anymore. These are mine. All of them. Paid in full. The silence was heavy, broken only by the ticking of cooling engines. Nathan's stammered voice shaking, but how could you possibly? I turned toward the desk at the far end of the garage. A laptop sat open, its screen glowing. Charts filled the display, real-time numbers of students using my platform, signed contracts with Harvard revenue projections stretching into millions. I gestured at the screen. This is how. Not by mocking people, not by clinging to a family name, but by building something that matters. Nathan's face drained of color. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between me and the cars. For once, he had no words. I met Nathan's stunned gaze. You've spent years telling me I'm nothing. Tonight you finally see the truth. I didn't need to shout or beg or fight for your approval. I just had to keep building. And now the silence speaks louder than anything you've ever said. The garage hummed with the low buzz of fluorescent lights. Nathan opened his mouth, closed it again. No clever comeback. No audience left to laugh with him. just the sound of snow falling outside. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the shadow at the table. I was the storm they hadn't seen coming. And that Christmas, while they came to laugh at me, they left with their pride shattered. Because true success doesn't need applause. It just needs one moment, one garage door opening to change everything. The snow had already settled thick on the streets by the time Nathan and Ethan drove away that night. Their taillights disappeared into the dark, leaving me standing alone in the garage with the quiet hum of the lights above. For the first time, I felt no sting from their words, no ache for their approval. The silence in that space wasn't empty, it was full, steady, and mine. In the days that followed, my parents called less. Nathan stopped sending his barbed messages. The family dinners carried on without me, but I no longer cared. I had learned something that took me years to understand. I didn't need a place at their table to prove I belonged anywhere. I had built my own. Success, I realized, is not about the garage full of cars or the contracts signed with big names. It's about waking up each morning knowing I no longer measure myself against their shadow. I measure myself against the person I used to be, the girl who once stayed silent at birthday parties and Thanksgiving dinners, praying to be seen. Looking back, I don't regret the silence I held for so long. It gave me space to grow, to build, to rise. And when the moment came when the garage door opened on that snowy Christmas night, I learned the greatest truth of all. Sometimes the quietest revenge is simply